Hello again. We are going to continue on with the muscular system today, and we will be using, where'd they go? That's not it. We will be using the skeletal drawings that we've done in the past, but I wanted to start out by just talking to you just quickly about muscles in general. So we're going to start with the arm. And we'll look at a couple muscles a little more in depth than we will most of the other things that we're going to look at today. But if we start with the arm, and we're going to come in here and do kind of a side view. This is the head of the humerus and the greater trochanters, the bump that comes off of there. All bumps exist for a reason. They are where muscles attach. So we're going kind of a side view here. And here we're going to have the ulna. Kind of like that. And over here we're going to have the radius. Okay, so there's our radius and our ulna. Let's call that good. And we've got this bump here on the ulna. It's called the olecranon process. Olecranon process. And we talked about it when we did the skeletal system, that when it kind of folds back into a divot in the back of the humerus there. But let's go up here too, and we'll add the shoulder blade. So the humerus and the shoulder blade, they form into a ball and socket joint, and there's this kind of pocket in the scapula. Here's our shoulder blade. There's kind of a pocket. And we have two processes that come up off of that. The acromion process, which we did look at when we did the skeletal system. And then we have the coracoid process, which is kind of also right up in here coming off. So anyhow, there's this ball and socket joint on the shoulder blade. Get rid of some of that. You get the idea. Ball and socket joint is called the glenoid fossa. And this, we said this is the acromion process. And this smaller one over here is the coracoid. And I think that's what I wanted to get laid out on there. The reason that we're talking about this is this hinge joint. This is a hinge joint at the elbow. You obviously know how your elbow works. It can open and close. And that muscles, when we get in talking about muscles, they have one point is called the origin, where the muscle starts, and where the muscle goes to is called the insertion. So if we start with the biceps, big muscle on the front of your arm, this roundish part is typically referred to as the belly. So here's the bicep muscle, but it has to attach somewhere. And this muscle comes down and it attaches to the lower arm. So it crosses this hinge joint right here. It crosses that joint and attaches down here. Okay. The head, or the origin of the head of the muscle, comes up here and it attaches up here on the shoulder blade, and it goes through there's a groove right here in this bone. It kind of sits down in the groove, and it also comes and it attaches to this coracoid process. So that's tendon. And if we're going to do it right, this is our tendon in blue. And then this is our muscle. And what you'll see is that this muscle, it crosses two different joints. So it crosses this ball and socket joint here, and it crosses this hinge joint. So muscles are going to cross joints because they're used to operate levers, which are your bones. And since we're back here on the arm, we'll go ahead and put on the muscle in the back of your arm called the triceps. Depending how much you work out, my tricep is nowhere near this bulky. And the triceps is going to come down through a groove in the olecranon process, and it's going to connect down here to the ulna. And it's going to come up and it's going to connect in a few spots up here. So this muscle is actually called the triceps, and tri means three. So what we're working with is three different parts of this muscle, or three different bellies. This is 1 and 2 right here, so attaching to the shoulder blade and then coming back and attaching to the humerus. So that's 1 and 2. And then there's a third. Let me see if I can get a slightly different color here. There's a third, and it's kind of a sheath, and it's a long, narrow, and it attaches again to the back of the humerus. But these three together make up the triceps. And again, it crosses different joints. So in this class, we don't have to learn all of the origins and insertions of the muscles, because it's just beyond the scope of what we're doing. It's kind of a lot. But we will look again at the muscles that are going to help with figure drawing especially. Okay, and since we're talking about the biceps and the triceps, let's go get the skeleton back on here and get another new layer. And if we zoom in on our skeleton and we go back, and we're going to add in the muscles on the front, the biceps is going to be located here. But you guys already knew that. Now you did. It's just one of those, common muscles that everybody knows: your biceps, your pecs, quads. And let's see where these attach. So here's our biceps. Again, it's two muscles together that make up the biceps. And the tendon that crosses onto the ulna. I think it actually connects over here to the side. Alright, you get the idea. So there's our biceps. And just for your own information, there's also obviously other muscles in here that help aid in this joint. One is, you don't have to draw this in if you don't want. One is the brachialis muscle. It's kind of a short muscle. It attaches down here where the biceps does, and attaches here to the humerus. And the other is the brachioradialis, which attaches to the radius and kind of comes around and wraps around and connects to the back of the elbow. So there are obviously additional muscles in here. We're just kind of doing the tip of the iceberg kind of thing with the muscular system because it's so huge and involved, and this is just kind of a start for us. Then if we go over to the back view of the skeleton, we'll leave the biceps up there if we can. We're going to put in the triceps. And again, the triceps are the muscles on the back of the arm. And I think that's another one that most people know, your biceps and your triceps. One is attaching here to the humerus. Again, you don't need to have the attachments memorized. And the other belly is going to attach up here to the scapula. And down to the olecranon process as well. And because it's the triceps, tricep means 3, so we've got one more muscle in here we need to deal with. I'm actually going to put it in blue so we can see it a little easier. And the we can do it on this side. The third muscle in the triceps is just a big wide muscle that attaches here to the back of the humerus, and it comes down and attaches again to the elbow. So that is your third muscle in your tricep group, and it would be obviously underneath that. So this is the triceps. We can stick it in there underneath in a different color if you want. You can see it a little bit. There it is. And so it would be underneath. The other two bellies would be on top of it. And this is the triceps. Now, when we move down here to the lower arm, there are 8 muscles on the front of your arm and 8 on the back, and they work in different layers. So just real quick, if this is there's the bone, here's your wrist, and there's all the bones in there. You have these muscles. You have one layer which is a deep layer, and then you have another layer which is a superficial, and there's 4 muscles here and 4 muscles here. And you have again on the other side of your arm a superficial and a deep layer, and there's 4 muscles here and 4 muscles here. And these come down and they go across your wrist and they attach up here in your fingers. Why so many muscles? And the answer to that is that the most superficial set of muscles are going to attach up here on the humerus, and they're going to make a group here. And then here's our brachioradialis taking up this space right here, if you're wondering why there's nothing there. So wrapping around, coming down, and the tendon is going to cross over the wrist through what's called the retinaculum, which is a fibrous band that holds it in place. And if we looked at the wrist, if you held your hand out straight, pointing at me, and we cut your fingers off, the bones in your wrist are going to make, well, okay, if this is the top, they're going to make this kind of shape, and they make this tunnel, and all the tendons and nerves and veins and arteries all go through here, and then it's got this fibrous band here called the retinaculum. And this is what's known as the carpal tunnel. And you've probably heard of carpal tunnel syndrome. That's when you get overuse and you get a swelling of this right here, and it tightens down on all the blood vessels and nerves and tendons, or the tendons swell and everything expands in here, and it cuts off the circulation and the nerves to your fingers. Let's see, and they'll come in for the surgery, they'll come in to fix this, and they will literally cut that, and that's how they will fix it. So kind of off the track there just a little bit, but anyhow. But the reason that these cross is so you have a superficial and a deep layer, and the deep layer is going to come here and go all the way out to the last knuckle on your finger. These are the tendons going out. And then we've got the different muscles, the four muscles in here, and the superficial layer is going to sit on top of that. So you have a superficial layer on top, and those tendons are going to go through, and they're going to come out to just the middle knuckle. So if you clamp down on your arm real tight and you move your fingers, you can feel the different muscles firing in there. But that's why there's so many of them. And because there's so many of them, we're just going to call them the wrist flexors, because the ones on the front of your arm allow you to close your hand to flex it, and we're going to call the ones on the back the wrist extensors. So you can actually call them the flexor muscles of the forearm, the wrist flexor muscles, the extensor muscles of the forearm, but the flexors and extensors, and we're just going to know them as a group. And the extensors are going to be, kind of the same kind of setup coming through. You get the idea. So again, we don't need to know all the muscles in the forearm, just the flexors are on the front. If you're in anatomical position, they're in the anterior side, and the extensors are on the posterior or the back side. So then if we take a look at these and we turn on, I don't know if I can find it, that's not it, the muscles that we drew last time, you can start to see how how these things are working together. Get that out of there. We're going down to the lower limbs, and we're going to start with the muscles on your bum. We have 3 muscles that make up your butt. They're called the gluteus maximus, the gluteus medius, and the gluteus minimus. Let me try writing that in English. maximus, gluteus medius, and gluteus minimus. And again, these are obviously named for their size. And most people have heard the term gluteus maximus, but probably not gluteus medius or minimus. The only term that you're going to need to be able to identify is this, the gluteus maximus. And again, that's just a large surface muscle that it makes up the form of the body. The gluteus minimus attaches deep in here in the pelvis and attaches out to the hip. Let me get a actual muscle color. The gluteus medius does kind of the same thing. It's a little bit bigger, it covers a little more area, and it attaches down here to the bone of the femur a little bit further down. And then the one that you need to know about and be able to identify and name, the gluteus maximus. Again, just a large muscle here that connects to the outside of the femur. And makes up what we refer to as your butt or your bottom. So there's the three muscles: minimus, medius on top of it, and maximus on top of that. But again, all you need is the gluteus maximus. But three very, very strong muscles. Then further down on your leg, we are going to be working with the hamstrings, which again is a group of muscles. I have to go with a different color. A group of muscles, and it's made up of three muscles that connect up here to your sacrum and come down and connect in various places. The deepest most hamstring is the semimembranosus. And again, you don't need to know that. You just need to identify this group. But so anyhow, here's this group, and it comes down kind of on the back of your leg around and connects down here to the femur. I'm trying to get these in so they kind of get the idea of the shape. Kind of like that. There we go. And there's three muscles, and again there's a deeper one that's underneath here. All you need to know is that this is the hamstring group on the back of the leg. And if we stay on the upper leg, let me get another color here. We're going to come in and we're going to put the quadricep group in. And the quadricep, as the name kind of implies, quad is made up of four large muscles. And these four muscles have various connection points Let me just get it blocked in here and then we'll go from there. Okay, you just need to remember that these are called the quadriceps because there's 4 of them. If, just for our own interest, that this middle muscle here is called the rectus femoris, RUS. And let's see, we have the vastus medialis and the, what's that one going to be? Take a guess. I bet you know. Vastus lateralis. And there's another muscle underneath here that we can't see, and it's known as the vastus intermedius. So not super creative on the naming, which I like. I like things that are pretty easily understood as far as naming anatomy goes, and this is pretty straightforward. One thing that's kind of interesting about the rectus femoris, this muscle right here in the middle, is that this tendon comes down and it encompasses the kneecap. And then the tendon continues on down to the femur. So there's your kneecap kind of floating in there. The kneecap's not technically attached to really attached to much. It's just kind of free floating in the middle of this tendon. And then the idea is that the quadriceps tendon, or is it the or is it a ligament? Because a tendon again connects muscle to bone, and a ligament connects bone to bone. So here we have muscle connecting to the kneecap, which is bone, and here we have bone connecting to bone down here. So it's, you know, kind of depends on who you're talking to. But that's kind of interesting about the kneecap, I think, at least. Give it a little highlight. Fancy kneecap. And while we're up here on the leg, we're going to do two of they're kind of my favorite muscles. I just love their names and I love their shapes. And they kind of control the medial lateral movement of your leg. But let me pick another color for this. I know my anatomy palette's a little limited and I don't really realize it until I want something fancy. Pink, why not? We have 2 muscles and they come right here off the pelvis. That's not going to work. I never have a green, do I? There we go. I'm going to do my bright green. A little darker, that's hard to see. Okay. And the first is the sartorius, and it starts here and it comes kind of wraps slightly around the quads to the inside of your leg. It's just got this really cool shape to it, and comes down and connects to the femur. And it's a long ribbon-like thin muscle. And then on the other side of that you have, so that's the sartorius, S-A-R-T-O-R-I-U-S, sartorius. And the next one is a big name. It's called the tensor fascia latae. and it's the it's the band, I think they call it the IT band is another name for it, that comes down the side of your leg, and it can get really tight um, from sports. And then it's got a larger muscle belly up here. So like a larger, come on now, a larger muscle belly up here, and then a thinner body to the, this is still muscle coming down, and then of course attaching down here. And this is the, just to make life not such a pain, I'm going to write it down here. You'll remember which one I'm talking about. We'll put a star on it. The tensor fascia lata. I said latte. And the reason I said latte is because when I was learning this, the way I remembered the name of it is that fascists get tense if they don't get their latte. So that was just kind of a weird way that something that came to mind that I remembered it. So fascia tensor lata. But I don't know, it's a cool muscle. I think it's kind of cool. And again, you can see, start to see that when you start blocking these muscles in, you can see the form coming along. And we have one more group in here I want to talk about called the adductor muscles. And there's several different adductor muscles, but pretty much they all kind of come off the pelvis here. I'll do it on this side. They come off the pelvis here, and they attach into the femur in various places and all the way down. And then these are individual muscles in here, a whole group of them. So you'd see them coming in like this. But there you start to see the form of the groin area and the leg developing a little bit more. These are the adductor muscles. Adductor muscles. I don't remember if we have those identified in our anatomy study guide or not. But you know, again, it's another group of muscles you should know, because when you're doing the figure drawing, especially, you can see that those muscles in action frequently, depending on the pose. I was going to say something else about that. What was it? No idea. I'm sure it'll come back to me in a few minutes. Oh, adductor. See, it did. Adductor. Adductor means to pull inward. Abduct. So abduct something means to take away. So these are pulling into the center and pulling your legs in medially. So they are the adductor muscles. And we'll just keep going here with the front of the leg a little bit further. We're going to put one muscle here. Obviously there's more, but we're going to put one muscle here that I want you to know about, the tibialis anterior. And that is, when you feel the front of the femur, that ridge on your bone, the one you always smack against the table, there's a muscle, if you flex, that is right there that you can feel, the tibialis anterior, and it comes across the foot and connects in here. And there are other muscles on the back that are going to make up more of the form of the leg. So that one, we'll call it, get a couple, tibialis anterior. Now if we go back to the back of the leg, again, muscles that make up the form of the form of the leg, you have this big muscle here called the gastrocnemius. And I think people refer to it as your calf muscle, I think. And it has two bellies, so it's coming from each side down here to the tendon. And this tendon down here, oh, so this is a gastrocnemius, big word, Gastrocn, let's see, Emius, gastrocnemius, which we can kind of pencil in over here. You get the idea. Underneath it, you have another muscle called the soleus, which attaches lower on the leg. I think it attaches actually right up here. And it doesn't make up a ton of the shape, but if somebody's legs are really built, like they do a lot of biking or something, you can definitely see that, the soleus. I don't think you have to know that one, but just know that it's in there. But the gastrocnemius and the tendon, colloquially, it's known as the Achilles tendon, Achilles tendon. But it's actually the calcaneal tendon. This bone, if you remember the calcaneus, calcaneal tendon. And I'm sure I just murdered the spelling of that. We'll just go with it though, calcaneal tendon. Again, don't have to know it. And the Achilles tendon, if you aren't familiar with the story of Achilles, a Roman Greek, let's see, Greek, or Roman. Can't remember. Greek or Roman, Achilles was a famous warrior and archer, and he couldn't be killed, according to legend. And when he finally did die, they found an arrow had pierced right through that tendon in his leg, according to legend. And the myth was that that is what had killed him. And so when someone says that something is your Achilles tendon, it means it's your weak spot. It's a spot that can take you out. Kind of like saying something's your Waterloo. You have to go look that one up. And you should read more. Let's see if I had any others that I wanted to talk to you about. I don't think so. I think that brings us to our list, to where we're at, what we need to know for the class. I'm going to put the other, not that. I want to put the other muscles on here. If we throw a new layer and you think about the gluteus maximus, and you think about the quadricep group and where it attaches, the hamstrings, sorry, and the quads, and the tensor fasciae latae muscle on the outside, the tibialis anterior, and you start to see where, again, if you know the anatomy, you can draw the form. It's just understanding what is underneath is so helpful. And if you're interested in being a medical illustrator, obviously you have to know it, but just as an artist in general, it's just a really good thing to know. So I guess that's the end of that. If you need anything, don't hesitate at all to drop me an email, and I have office hours from 3:30 to 6 or 5:30 or 6 today. So feel free to stop by if you need anything.